This video may contain details of graphic content. This channel is for mature audiences only. Some viewers might find this disturbing. Dorothy Jane Scott was born on April 23, 1948. She was born to parents Jacob and Vera Scott. Dorothy resided in Stanton, California, where she was raising her young son. At the time of her disappearance, she shared a home with her aunt and her 4-year-old son named Sean. Dorothy worked as a secretary for 2 jointly owned stores in Anaheim, California. One specializing in psychedelic items like lava lamps and love beads. The other a head shop. Family and colleagues attested to her devout religious beliefs, her desire to spend time with her loved ones, and her commitment to not indulge in alcohol or drugs. Dorothy's parents, who resided in Anaheim, frequently took care of their grandson while Dorothy was at work. On May 28, 1980, after attending a work meeting, Dorothy noticed her colleague Conrad Bostrom looking unwell with a red mark on his arm. Alarmed by this, Dorothy and another colleague left the meeting, drove Conrad to UC Irene Medical Center's emergency room. On the way there, she stopped by her parents' home to check on her son and to let them know where she was going, and also to change her scarf from a black one to a red one. At the hospital, the medical staff stated that the red mark on Conrad's arm was a black widow spider bite, and he received treatment. Dorothy and Pam waited in the ER lobby until Conrad was discharged at 11 p.m. He was given a prescription for medication. Dorothy offered to bring the car around to the front entrance because she did not want Conrad to have to walk far due to his condition. After a brief visit to the restroom, she walked out to the parking lot while her 2 colleagues, Pam and Conrad, filled out his prescription and waited at the exit. When she didn't return within a few minutes, they ventured into the parking lot and suddenly witnessed Dorothy's car approaching at a high speed. Despite waving their arms to grab her attention, the car continued going at a high rate of speed, swiftly taking a sharp turn right around the parking lot. Due to the blinding of the full-beam headlights in the darkness, neither one of them could identify the person behind the wheel. Initially, they assumed Dorothy had an emergency, but after several hours without her contacting anyone, she was reported missing. The following day, police responded to a location approximately 10 miles from the hospital where she vanished. There had been reports of a burning car. At 4:30 a.m., officers discovered her white 1973 Toyota station wagon abandoned and engulfed in flames in an alley. Dorothy was nowhere to be found. When investigators questioned her parents, they learned that in the months leading up to her disappearance, she had been receiving anonymous calls at work from a man reportedly stalking her. Although she recognized the voice, she could not recall the man's name. The caller alternated between expressing love for her and making threats to end her life, providing accurate details of her daily routine to prove he was watching her. Vera, Dorothy's mom, could recall that one day he called and instructed her to go outside because he had something for her. When she went out, she found a single dead rose on the windshield of her car. From that moment on, Vera expressed a deep concern, stating that a particularly alarming call left her daughter terrified. The man threatened Dorothy, stating, quote, "Okay, now you are going to come my way, and when I get you alone, I will cut you into bits so no one will ever find you," end quote. Fearing for her safety, Dorothy contemplated purchasing a handgun and began taking karate lessons just 1 week before she went missing. Despite suggestions of relationship problems, Dorothy's father clarified that she did not have a boyfriend, although she dated on occasions. Just over a week after Dorothy went missing, her parents received a phone call from an unknown man who chillingly stated, quote, "Are you related to Dorothy Scott? Well, I've got her," end quote, before he quickly hung up. This pattern continued from 1980 until 1984. He would call almost every Wednesday afternoon with the same claims. He had Dorothy or he killed her. The calls were always brief and occurred when Vera was home alone. In April of 1984, Dorothy's dad picked up one of the phone calls. This would lead to the phone calls ending when the Orange County Registrar ran a story on the case on June 12, 1980. A man called the front desk and spoke with managing editor Pat Riley, confessing to Dorothy's kidnapping and murder. The caller stated, quote, "I killed her. I killed Dorothy Scott. She was my love. I caught her cheating with another man. She denied having someone else. I killed her," end quote. Police were alarmed as the caller knew details that were not released in the newspaper. Details such as Conrad having a spider bite on the evening of May 28th and Dorothy changing her scarf after the employee meeting. The caller also claimed Dorothy had called him from the hospital that evening, a statement that wasn't true due to Pam being with Dorothy the entire time and denied her making any phone calls. Detectives suspected the identified caller was involved in Dorothy Scott's disappearance. On August 6, 1984, a construction worker discovered human and canine bones side by side, approximately 30 feet from Santa Ana Cannon Road, which means she was strangely buried next or underneath of a dog. The remains were partly charred and were estimated to have been there for around 2 years, following a bushfire in 1982. Among the remains, forensic officers found a watch and a turquoise ring identified by Vera belonging to Dorothy. Eerily, the watch stopped at 12:30 a.m., which was a little more than an hour after Pam and Conrad last saw Dorothy's vehicle speeding past them on May 28, 1980. Several days after her remains were found, dental records confirmed that the bones belonged to Dorothy Jane Scott. Due to skeletal remains, the pathologist was unable to determine a cause of death. Following the discovery of her remains, the anonymous phone calls to Dorothy's parents returned. After 3 months of not hearing from the man, despite police installing a voice recorder at the Scott's residence, the brief duration of the calls made it impossible to trace the number. Vera stated, quote, "For 4 years, the caller has tortured us," end quote. The family did not change their number because they believed that Dorothy would one day call them. Vera also expressed her feelings about the man responsible for her daughter's death, stating, quote, "He took a life that loved life. I feel in my heart that he deserves some sort of punishment," end quote. Dorothy's parents believed this man is the same man who had harassed her daughter for months prior to her disappearance. Police didn't have much leads to follow, but one particular lead emerged during the investigation. In the early morning hours of July of 1982, 2 years after Dorothy went missing, 25-year-old Patricia Jean Schneider went missing after finishing her work shift as a waitress. At 3:45 a.m., she made a phone call from a Circle K stating that her car broke down and she simply vanished. Just like Dorothy's vehicle, Patricia's vehicle was found engulfed in flames in a field, and there wasn't any trace of Patricia at the scene. It was evident that her car was purposely set on fire. Foul play is suspected, but it still remains unsolved to this day. However, a significant discrepancy is that Patricia never received any threatening phone calls to anyone's knowledge. Whether or not these two crimes are linked, the question remains. And also, I forgot to add that Patricia Schneider was in California as well. As of the recording of this video, no one has been charged with Dorothy Jane Scott's murder, and the case remains unsolved.